Paleontologists, people responsible for digging up the taxa of the past. They are one of the most important people when trying to understand the history of our planet. And all of them have a journey to get into academia and learn some of the most complex sciences. Not all of them are equal, and some are quite trying. In this video, we will look at some of the lesser college papers in terms of quality. Like here's this one from Harvard, a very respected university and probably the most famous one around the world. Here's one from one of their students. Spinosaurus dinosaur. There was no way we could have gotten this clarification otherwise. I thought it was a mammal. Spinosaurus is none other than the leading star of Jurassic World 3. I wish. Also known as spine lizards, these carnivorous dinosaurs could grow up to 15 meters in length, true, and 16 meters in height. It's a shame to note that once an almost destroyed complete skeleton of Spinosaurus was at display in a museum in Germany, but was destroyed during World War II. Here's another one by the Minneapolis Community and Technical College. Not sure this seems to be an actual assignment, but maybe to make the link for another school. I don't know. Tyrannosaurus Rex by Guy. One of the most dangerous dinosaurs was Tyrannosaurus Rex. It looked like a huge lizard with sharp teeth. It lived over 60 million years ago. From nose to tail, T-Rex was as long as a school bus. It was taller than a house and weighed more than an airplane. T-Rex head was as long as a kitchen table. I guess. T-Rex was one of the biggest meat-eating dinosaurs. It could eat hundreds of pounds of meat in one bite. Animals that eat meat have sharp teeth. T-Rex had 60 of them. Some of the teeth were as big as bananas. When T-Rex lost a tooth, it grew a new one. T-Rex stood on two powerful legs. It had two small arms. Its strong tail helped to keep it from falling over. It might be fun to see a live Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I wouldn't want to meet one. Would you? Yeah, sure. And finally, on Giganosaurus from Extension Services Management Academy, Garhi-Dopta Musafarabad, AGK. Doesn't sound like a biology college, but Giganosaurus is a rubric of a theropod dinosaur that lived in what's now Argent during the early Cenomanian age of the late Cretaceous period, roughly 99.6 to 95 million years ago. The holotype there just cuts off. Discovered in the conformation of Patagonia in 1993, and nearly 70 complete. The beast is named Giganosaur, 1995. The genus name translates to giant southern lizard. The adventurer, Harundi Carolini, a dentary bone, tooth, and some tracks discovered before the holotype were laterally assigned to this beast. The rubric of tract important is part of the debate about the maximum size of theropod dinosaurs. It may have helped define stress when a bite was delivered against prey. Giganosaurus is allowed to have been apex to its ecosystem, may have fed on juvenile sauropod dinosaurs. That was peak. Lastly, I want to dedicate the final part of this video to a very interesting magazine. Here it discusses the Mabul, or the Hebrew term for the Great Flood that Noah and his family got on a boat for and got all the animals for and everything. They make some interesting claims about how it all fits in with a young Earth. So I'm going to go by page, just looking at what they have to say. If you want to read it, here's your chance. The first page isn't much, and it's just mostly explaining what layers are. But now, they pose that there are signs of the flood. If you want to read it, here's your chance. So other than explaining what these strata are made of, they make a really weird claim. Is that the order of strata is that trilobites are on the bottom, plants are in the middle layers, and large animals are at the top. Anyone knows anything about geology knows that one of the most fundamental principles is the law of superposition. With any given layer, it's older than the one above it, but younger than the one under it. The reason trilobites are often found at the lowest layers is because they're really old creatures. But as for the foliage and dinosaur claim, no. Many trees evolved and died during the age of the dinosaurs, but if you're referring to the fact that trees can be found in lower layers where dinosaurs can't, again, that just means that they evolved before the dinosaurs. If you want to read it, here's your chance. Another really weird argument is the fact that some dinosaur bones are articulated and very complete, so something would have to bury them very quickly, which is true. But the problem is that these fossils are far few in between, and if there really was a great flood that wiped out every single dinosaur species at once, we'd see a lot more complete skeletons. Because my favorite dinosaur is Spinosaurus, and this is the most reliable adult specimen. Another argument is polystrate tree fossils. If a tree was fossilized standing up, that means something huge and quick had to bury it, which is also true. But modern events like the eruption of Mount St. Helens show that upright tree fossils and rapid sediment burial can happen during local catastrophes. Polystrate fossils are evidence of rapid local burial, but not evidence of the entire planet was hit by a gigantic global flood. They also use dinosaur graveyards as proof that something quick would have to kill them and bury them, which is also true. But it's the same things as the other examples. Considering the biggest dinosaur graveyards consist of herds, it makes a lot of sense that in these huge graveyards containing thousands of individuals, that if a local natural disaster hit them, they'd all die and be buried. What his arguments seem to be is just looking at outliers and then saying it applies to a global scale. He continues to do this by saying the entirety of the Morrison, every single graveyard, all happened at the same time, and says it's consistent because some skeletons are so well preserved, despite the fact the average sauropod is described by a leg bone. And also the Morrison Formation lasted for 7 million years. They also make the point that larger dinosaurs are found on the more bottom layers, and smaller ones are at the top. If you want an extreme example of why this is wrong, Cratoavis, a 4-gram dinosaur, is found in deeper layers than Argentinosaurus, an 80-ton dinosaur. They also try to use the leg proteins found in T-Rex femurs to justify that they're only a couple thousand years old. They think the existence of soft tissues disproves the world being millions of years old, and that people denied it because they don't want to say their beliefs are wrong. Yes, some people were skeptical, but this person's making it seem like it was one paleontologist trying to find out the truth versus the paleontology oligarchy. The discovery was real, but soft tissue doesn't mean fresh tissue. Scientists found degraded protein remnants in microscopic structures, but lacks things like DNA, which expire quickly. It's more of a very soft fossil than something you can, put on a grill and eat. Schweitzer herself rejects Younger's conclusions, and the fossils still show all the signs of being extremely ancient rather than recently buried. There's a lot on the next page, so I'll just debunk some specific claims. And then limestone came in afterwards to preserve stuff as soon as the flood slowed down, despite the fact that limestone forms better in more calm environments, or that flat rock layers show rapid flood deposition, but flat layers are already seen in normal oceans today, or that commentaries from Rashi might support Pangea. Here are the last pages, take some time to read it. Okay, there's a lot to uncover here. The article claims that during the Mobble, tectonic plates move several feet or even yards a day. Though the problem is that it's not just little rocks in the ground, it's thousands of kilometers wide and dozens of kilometers thick. And moving so fast would create so much heat that the crust would just mostly melt. And fun fact, scientists around 100 years ago did not agree with Pangea because for the rate to be realistic, the Earth had to be very, very old. And at the time, they only thought the Earth was 400 million years old. And not to mention, with modern radiometric methods, we could tell how fast the Earth moved and how old it actually is for it all to make sense. Also, sea fossils on the top of mountains don't really prove a single flood. When tectonic plates collide together, it pushes seabeds upwards, so this can happen naturally. And also with radiometric methods, we could tell that oceanic crust gets progressively older farther away from mid-ocean ridges in highly organized pattern. Not exactly ripped from the ground and in one day. There's not much more I want to talk about here, but I do want to say something. Obviously, the Bible and science don't contradict. They do if you have more extreme interpretations, but in their base ideas, they do hold a lot of similarities. Like this article says, you should help strengthen the faith in a world full of questions and challenges. You don't do that by spreading half-truths and just straight-up misinterpretations of what's happening. There are genuine arguments for science and religion coming together in a way that actually works. Not every scientist is right, but if your beliefs have to contradict everything what modern science says, how confident can you be in your interpretation of your religion?